Hello, everyone. A very good day to all of you. I hope all of you are fine. All of you are safe and healthy. To those of you who have joined this webinar today, thank you very much. And once again, I wish you good health and happiness to you as well as your near and dear ones. All right. Even before we move forward any further with this session, I just wanted to make sure that my audio is clear, that my voice is loud and clear, and you're able to see my screen. If you could just make sure that the audio and video is good to go, please let us know via the chat window. You can use the chat window and then send us a quick yes. We'll take that as a confirmation that the voice and the video is clear. So I'm just waiting for a couple of yeses here pertaining to the audio and video. Right, yes, 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 audio is good. Right, fantastic. Thank you so very much for the confirmation. I hope everything is good to go. All right. Now, the topic for today's session is going to be around Active Directory security, not just your on-prem Active Directory security, but we'll be talking about hybrid Active Directory as well. So the session is twofold. The first part of the session will be handled by me. So the topic is, again, going to be managing hybrid Active Directory from a security standpoint. As I mentioned earlier, we are not just going to be talking about the on-premises Active Directory alone. We'll be talking about Office 365, what are the best practices that you need to follow, and we'll be talking about Exchange, so on and so forth, right? Now, the second half of the session will be handled by my good friend and colleague, Sharda, who's joined the session with me. And Sharda will be talking about password best practices. Now, how do you implement a password self-service system for your end users so that they don't call the help desk technician? At the same time, what are the key points that we'll have to bear in mind in order to strike the right balance between security and convenience? Okay, just because you are handing over the ability to reset your own password or unlock your own account to the end users, it doesn't mean you can allow them to set a compromised password, right? So how do we find out whether your users are setting a weak password? How do we prevent that from happening? And how do we support our remote employees? More than 90% of the workforce around the world are now working from home. So how do we support our remote workforce to self-service their passwords and few of the authentication techniques as well? So Sharda has a lot in store to discuss soon after my session is over. All right, a quick introduction about myself. My name is Vivin Satyan, and this is my email address right here. So I would request you to just make a note of the email address. So in case you have any questions, you need any resources, or if you have any doubts, please feel free to drop an email to me. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions, right? So the email address is vivin.ks@manageengine.com. Now, what qualifies me to deliver a session to you? Well, I've been with ManageEngine for over 8 years now, and I do two things here primarily in my job. The first thing is I take part in seminars and conferences. I used to take part in seminars and conferences physically, even before even before the virus started doing its rounds of the world. So that's one thing that I do. So during my visits to various countries, I interact with administrators, I interact with technicians, I interact with IT directors. So this is a two-way learning experience. So when I talk to people, they give me some of their technical problems with regards to managing Active Directory, managing Office 365, and the tools that they're using, the complications that they face, so on and so forth. So I understand that some of the problems that people give to me are kind of common. An administrator in Australia and an administrator in India might have the same problems managing Office 365 or AD for that matter, right? Because the technology is the same throughout the world. The second thing that I do is I also implement some of these solutions. So I know challenges from an implement standpoint as well, right? When I walk in for consultations to organizations. Now, with that little bit of experience in hand that I've managed to gather over the last 8 years, I've now created a deck for you that has 4 key principles when it comes to managing hybrid Active Directory from a security standpoint. And 4 key topics that we'll be discussing all throughout the session is, the first topic is I want you to generate certain reports in your AD and in Office 365. If you are an administrator managing AD and Office 365, I have some common reports for you. When I say common reports, anyone who's using Active Directory and O365 can benefit from these reports. So we'll be discussing some common reports, at the same time some vital reports as well. Okay. The second topic is along the lines of bringing in uniformity amongst your users, amongst your groups, and contact, especially your users. Okay? Now, let me give you an example. I've walked in for consultation to many organizations over these years, and something that I noticed is some organizations lack standardization when it comes to Active Directory or O365. To give you a better example, what happens here is two users belonging to the same department have different permission levels for some weird reason, right? Now that shouldn't be happening. That is a result of not following a standardization process in place, not having a standard process in place when you create accounts, when you modify accounts, or when you even delete accounts. Okay? So there has to be a standard process in place that you have to follow all throughout the object life cycle, starting from creation to modification to deletion, right? Especially when it comes to users belonging to the same department or same job roles. The third topic is when you do certain things in Active Directory and O365 day in and day out, why not automate the process? And when I say automate, I'm not saying just, automate and let the application take control. No, I'm talking about a controlled way of automating regular tasks so that you have the control switch in your hand. Right? So when you feel that automation, the automation is not going the way you want it to go, so you now have the ability to actually disable the automation or modify the automation or completely stop the automation as well, right? Even before the automation does anything in your infrastructure. The fourth topic, it's no longer about the administrators alone. I mean, you have the HR initiating the user creation process. You have your help desk technicians assigning licenses, resetting password, unlocking accounts. So there arises a need of delegating actions to other users, right? Now, when we talk about delegating tasks to other users, we'll have to clearly understand that you should be delegating just tasks and you should not be delegating control or authority. Now, what I mean by delegating control or authority is you should not be delegating excessive rights to users for performing actions in AD and O365, right? So how do you delegate actions to other users as an administrator? And at the same time, how do you perform it in a non-intrusive way that does not lead to accumulation of excessive rights on your users? These are the 4 topics for today's session over the next 45 minutes. Let's get started. But even before that, we need to understand something here. So we need to understand whether we need to first look at the tools given to us by Microsoft for managing our hybrid Active Directory infrastructure. Now, these are some of the common tools that you would see in a Microsoft toolkit, right? Starting off with the most favorite tool of Microsoft, you have PowerShell. And then you have your age-old Active Directory users and computers. And then you have your Sky for Business. If you have Exchange, be it Exchange 2010 or 13 or 16 or 19, you have the EMC, the Exchange Management Console, right? And to know who, what, when, and where, you have the Event Viewer capturing all the actions performed by your users, modification done to your groups, changes done to your computers, anything related to PowerShell logging. Everything is uncovered under Event Viewer, right? Now, these are some of the tools. But if you take a closer look at the Microsoft Toolkit, the Office 365 Admin Center is the first tool ever to be introduced by Microsoft that had a proper graphical user interface, right? You see this GUI, that's graphical user interface. And the Office 365 Admin Center was the first tool that had a proper GUI. We did not have a graphical user interface for Active Directory users and computers. We do not have one for EMC, right? So all I'm suggesting here, I mean, I'm not against Microsoft, or I'm not trying to belittle any of these tools that you see on the screen. I mean, these tools are powerful in their own sense. They help administrators do a lot of things, accomplish a lot of things, especially PowerShell, right? I can confidently say that out of 10 administrators, 9 administrators are more than proficient in basic PowerShell operations, right? So PowerShell is something that you cannot avoid and then think of managing any infrastructure for that matter, be it on-prem or the cloud, right? So you have different flavors of PowerShell, one for managing your on-prem and a different flavor altogether for managing your cloud infrastructure. So PowerShell is inevitable. We understand that. But there are some challenges with the Microsoft Toolkit. And these challenges are true even till date. I mean, we are talking about this in the year 2020. The first challenge that I see is the confirmation messages that you get from these tools, especially in case of failures, are not very helpful. Okay. Now just think about it. You're trying to create 10 users using a PowerShell script in AD and Office 365, and 8 users get created fine, 2 of them fail. We do not have enough insight into the that we can derive from the message that we get from the failures, right? So you have error messages, you have syntax errors, but it doesn't tell you what exactly went wrong in the script that actually did not create the 2 users among the 10 users that you want to create, right? Now, the second challenge that I see here is consolidating information, because we're not just talking about one platform here. We're not just talking about Active Directory. We are talking about multiple platforms that admins nowadays have to deal with. We're talking about Exchange, O365, G Suite, Sky for Business, and whatnot, right? For every platform, you have its own console. So consolidating information from these, independent consoles, I would rather call it, is going to be a bit of a task. And the third thing, when you agree with me for these 2 points, then think about delegating these tools or the Microsoft Toolkit to non-admin users. That can become a bit tricky. I'm not exaggerating here, because the learning curve involved and also the time consumed in the process is something that you cannot overlook. Okay, so these are the basic challenges that I see. I'm not diving into the details here, but these are just the basic challenges that I see with the native tools. So that's why we thought, all right, how do we help administrators manage a hybrid infrastructure? How do we help them organize their on-prem and O365 infrastructure a bit more effectively? Okay. We introduced a tool 13 years ago named AD Manager Plus in the market, with starting off with just managing the on-prem infrastructure alone, right? So we started off with the on-prem infrastructure, and then we scaled to Exchange, and then we scaled to Office 365 and G Suite. So we, as an application team or an application division of ManageEngine, have now built a strong product that can help administrators manage multiple platforms under one roof. Okay, that's AD Manager Plus. That's just to give you a quick introduction about the tool that I'm going to be discussing about in the next 40 minutes. Don't get me wrong. Okay? You can be using another tool from a different vendor. That's totally fine, right? All I'm saying is the use case that I'm about to discuss over the next 30 minutes can be applied to the tool that you're now using. It need not be AD Manager Plus. It could be another tool. Okay, that's perfectly fine. So let's start with the first case or the first section of my fourfold session here. The first topic that I'd like to share with you is I'd like to give you some reports that I want you to generate starting from today onwards, if you're not generating them, right? Because I really believe that could help you gain some kind of insight into your infrastructure. You can even do this with PowerShell, you can do this with another tool, or you can do this with AD Manager, right? All I'm saying is see whether you can put these reports to use in your infrastructure starting from today. Now, the first report that I'd like to share with you is to find out how many administrators do we really have in an Active Directory infrastructure. Now, what do I mean by how many administrators do we really have? Okay. Now, if I ask you to list the number of administrators you have in your infrastructure, chances are you might open up the top level security groups, example, domain admins, enterprise admins, backup operators, DNS admins, and then you probably give me a report of number of users that you have in each group. Okay? You would remove the duplicates and you would arrive at a number saying, hey, we have 20 administrative accounts in the infrastructure, right? That manage AD and Office 365. That's the total number that we have. But the question is the number really 20 or could it be more than that? Okay, let's take a look at the basic example here to better understand that question. Okay, now I have this user right here. Okay, you see this, the name of the user. I mean, this is not an admin user. Now, according to my definition, I believe that there are just 20 admin accounts in my lab setup, right? And I have selected a technician right here who does not have or hold admin privileges. Okay? This is a normal help desk technician. And I have a couple of normal technicians here, not admins, but help desk technicians. Now, I have this habit of auditing my help desk technicians. For instance, if I have 5 technicians here, something similar to help desk-US, if I have 5 such accounts, and all of these 5 accounts are doing things in my AD and Office 365. So on a weekly basis, I get a report of the actions done by my technicians. Okay. Now I get one such report on a Monday morning. Okay. And when I go through the report, I find that this specific technician, right, the help desk user, please bear in mind, this is not a high privileged admin account. The help desk user who's not supposed to be deleting accounts or disabling accounts has actually done those operations in AD and Office 365. Now, I'll repeat, the help desk technician, according to my definition here, if you open up the help desk technician account, let me do that for you. And if you go to the member of tab, you see that the account is not part of any high privilege groups. Okay, just basic operations, account creation, domain users. Again, this is a built-in group, as all of you, know this. And then you have password reset and account unlock, SQL basic access, VPN access. None of these groups have admin rights. In the sense, none of these groups, according to my definition, have the ability to disable or delete accounts. But the report that I have in my email says that the same technician has disabled 2 accounts and deleted 1 of them. Now, the question that I really have to ask myself is, well, how many administrators do we really have? Okay, this is just 20, or do we have more administrators that we do not know or that are hidden, that have additional privileges? Now, in order to find this out, you can go about doing this in 2 ways. Okay, you can do it from a user's perspective, something like an investigation in this case, right? Or you can do it from a group's perspective. I'll be discussing 2 perspectives now to better explain the scenario. Now, let's start with the group check here. I'm just going to check whether the help desk-US technician is still part of the right groups. Okay, we've done this in the past, but let me repeat. So I go to the member of tab. I just have a look at the groups. The groups look pretty okay. Okay, none of these groups, according to my definition, have disable or delete rights. So which means I'm 100% sure it's none of these groups are causing the problem, right? So I just hit cancel. But one thing strikes my mind is, well, the groups that you see here are just direct groups in the infrastructure. And there is a concept called as group nesting with Microsoft. And that concept is, now a group in an Active Directory infrastructure could be a member of another group, right? Now what that means is a group can be nested with another group, and if that group has additional privileges, those additional privileges boils down to this user, right? So we are talking about group nesting here. So in order to find out how many administrators you really have, you'll have to consider the concept called group nesting from a user standpoint, okay? This is AD Manager Plus, and I'm going to do a nested report in order to find out the actual groups that the user is a part of. So I go to the reporting section of AD Manager Plus, and in the left pane, you have categories. Category for every object: user, password, group, computer, exchange, GPO reports, folder permission reports, which is talking about shares and NTFS permission. And then you have G Suite reports, compliance reports, and whatnot, right? For every category of compliance, yes, you have dedicated section. Okay, let's move on to our case now. We were talking about doing a nested query, not just a regular query to find out the direct groups, but a nested query. Now, we have 2 types of nested queries here. Finding out users in groups. This is doing it from a group standpoint. But for our investigation, we are trying to find out the groups for users. Groups for my help desk technician that deleted and disabled account. Okay, so I go to groups for users, and the account that we're talking about is help desk-US. So I select the same account here, and then I hit generate. Now this query, please keep in mind, is a nested query. So if this user has additional groups, those additional groups will get listed in the report. Now you see this? I don't have 5 groups, but how many groups do we have here? I have 10 groups. So 5 excessive groups that are nested. That's my point for this use case, okay? Understanding the excessive privileges that are vested in the form of nested groups, okay? And if you need to understand how the nesting works, just take a look at this, okay? If you just scroll down to the report, you have a group name, and the name of the group is VPN Access Group. Now just take a look at the member of attribute of the VPN Access Group. You have the application admin ITD and you have domain admins. Domain admins, one of the most powerful groups in Active Directory, okay? So if you're a member of this group, you basically can control the entire AD, right? Now this is one level of nesting. Now take a look at the other level of nesting, the second level of nesting. Now, if you take a look at the group called domain admins, which is right here, domain admins is in turn a member of 3 different groups, 3 other groups. Okay? You have denied RODC password replication group. This is group number 1, and you have administrators. So 2 groups, 2 additional groups. And the third level of nesting could be, what if the administrators are part of few other groups? Okay? Luckily for us, administrators are not member of any other group. So the chain ends here. But what if the administrator is part of another 5 different groups? Now, all these additional nesting boils down to my poor helpless technician, right? And this helpless technician now has excessive rights, which is a strict no-no. Now, once you know this from a user standpoint, all you need to do is just go ahead and select a couple of checkboxes here, go to more actions, get things sorted out, okay? But you could only get this insight if you have the concept called nesting in mind. That's my point, right? Now, this is from a user standpoint. Now, how about we look at it from a group standpoint? Okay, so far we've done this for users, but we're not going to be doing this for users unless and until you have a situation to do so, okay? You're not going to select all your 100 users one by one, and you're not going to try to find out how many groups the users are actually a member of. That's going to be time consuming and ineffective. You would do this only for performing an investigation. All right. But the second thing that you can do as part of a group health check in order to find out whether you have any such inappropriate group nesting is, you can do it from a group standpoint, okay, instead of doing it from a user standpoint. Now, let me give you a simple example right here. Now, if you have something called domain controllers in your infrastructure, right? Now, domain controllers are machines that could literally control the activity of the entire domain, right? Managing a GPO, defining policies and whatnot. And by default, only these 6 groups that you see on the screen have the ability to log in to the domain controller. So if you're a member of any one of these groups, you then gain access to the domain controller. If you're not part of any of these groups, you do not have access to the domain controllers. That's by default, okay? So which means we need to understand that these groups, right, enterprise admins, domain admins, administrators, are not contacting or are not connected to some of your basic groups in Active Directory. You don't want that. You don't want your top level groups to be linked to basic groups in Active Directory. This is what I call as group health check, okay? Again, we take into the concept called group nesting. Let me show you how this works. Okay, again, I go back to AD Manager Plus. I told you that we'll have to talk about nesting here, the concept called nesting. But now that we're talking about groups, I'm going to jump from the user report section to the group report section here. And please bear in mind this amazing report that I'm about to show you, which is detailed group members, which will help you understand such inappropriate group nesting from a group standpoint. So you go to detailed group members, right? Now, I'm about to select a sensitive group. So you can go ahead and select all kinds of admin groups here. So I just do the keyword admin. And then you can go ahead and select all the admin groups that you want. DNS admins, DHCP administrators, Hyper-V administrators, schema admins, enterprise admins, and whatnot. You can just go ahead and select all of them. Or you can do it one by one. In my case, I've just selected domain admins here and I hit OK. What I'm trying to achieve is I'm trying to find out whether my domain admins is part of any other basic group in Active Directory. But what would be more interesting is, apart from retrieving just the groups that belong to domain admin, I'm also going to retrieve the users, computers, and contacts that have any contact with my domain admins group, right? By default, this query is going to be nested. And if you don't want this to be nested, I would say go ahead and select this checkbox, okay? But we are trying to understand whether domain admins is part of any of these 4 objects in a nested manner. So I'm just going to hit generate. Now, after the report is complete, you'll be able to understand the importance of this report here. And just take a look at this. I have 4 tabs right here. In fact, 5 tabs: users, groups, computers, contacts, and all objects. So out of these 5 tabs, the tab that we are most interested in is the groups tab. Okay. So from the first tab, I understand that I have 13 users belonging to the domain admins group, both direct and nested. All right, I just have a look at the users. Everything looks good. So I'm just going to skip to the computers tab. Now computers, there are no computers in the domain admins group, which is good, which is exactly the way I want it. Contacts, I have no contact objects in the domain admins. But the most important tab is the groups tab. So in theory, I would expect no groups to be part of domain admins, right? If I just go to the groups tab right here, it looks like I have 2 groups that are nested or that are connected to domain admins. And the name of the 2 groups are, the first group is intern basic access group, and the second one is VPN access group. Now this is what I call as inappropriate nesting, right? So you have 2 basic groups in Active Directory, very basic groups, just by going by the naming convention, in touch with domain admins, which is a strict no-no. This is what I call as a group health check. Please do this by selecting your top level groups. It can be 5 groups or 10 groups or 20 groups, it doesn't matter. Run this report once in every week or once in every 15 days. It's not going to take you more than 2 minutes of your time to do this, but this could reveal whether your Active Directory is still in the right hands, okay? So this is the second report, but from a group standpoint. The first one was from a user standpoint. The second one was from a group standpoint. Well, let's move on to the next category of reports, which is something that you have in every infrastructure that you can imagine, right? We are talking about shared folders here, right? So let me give you a simple example to better explain my concept here. I have one such shared folders, and by the way, I'm not talking about a regular folder here. I'm talking about a confidential folder that should be accessible only by an intended audience. In my example, that confidential folder is named as corp data, right? And the way I have defined or set up corp data, the one that I've highlighted here, is I have set up this folder in such a way that this folder is accessible only by a specific group of users. And that group is called the finance managers group. I don't want any other member apart from the finance managers to be able to access corp data, because if you open up corp data, you have some sensitive information right here. Spending of the organization year-wise, vendor information and contract information. You have insurance details, asset details. So you don't want this information to be accessible by a regular user in your infrastructure. You want only an appropriate audience to access this. So if you have such confidential folders, I want you to do this exercise once in every 15 days. Just pick your top 10 or 20 folders here and spend just 5 minutes on each folder. That's it, right? That's all I'm asking you. And what I want you to do here is, I just want you to check whether these folders are still accessible by the right people. As simple as that. If it's a group, yes. If it's 2 groups, yes. You do not want to see excess permissions in the list. So I'm going to do this here, but I'm going to try this out the Microsoft way, and I'll show you the AD Manager Plus way of doing it, right? So we'll be doing it both the ways. First, the Microsoft way. Right click, properties. I go to security, hoping to see my finance managers group in the security tab. I go to security, and the first one is an alarm. I see the everyone group, okay? I see the creator owner, I see system, I see an account in the name of Vivin, I see administrators, and I also see finance managers right here. Now, according to my definition, this is the only entry that I was expecting to see in the security tab of corp data. Okay? Now, the point that I'm trying to drive here is, I'm not saying that this could happen in every infrastructure. All I'm saying is, if the permission of an important folder is manipulated by another administrator intentionally or by mistake, it doesn't matter. There's enough damage already, right? Especially in my case, it's trouble. It's not, the alarms have gone off now. So everyone in my infrastructure, because everyone means every user is part of this group now. Now everyone in my infrastructure have some level of access to corp data, which I do not want to happen at all. Of course, you might have an auditing system in place in order to alert you when permission changes. All that is fine, but all I'm saying is, why wait for an alarm? Why not just do a health check once in every 10 or 15 days, right? Especially in my case, now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. You know why I call this the tip of the iceberg? Because we are just having a look at the permissions on corp data alone. And we are not even sure whether the permission drills down to other folders here, because these folders can either copy permissions from corp data, which is called as permission inheritance, or these folders can have their own set of permission if the inheritance is set to false. You get my point here, right? So you'll have to do this right-click exercise on every folder that you have on the screen, right? So right-click, properties, repeat this for every folder. And if these folders have subfolders, repeat the exercise. That's going to be time-consuming and highly ineffective in order to understand the permission of a folder structure in its entirety, right? So I have a shortcut, and I have an effective shortcut, okay? Let's just show this to you. When you talk about managing permissions on confidential folders, I think about this as a two-step process, right? Step one is review. Pick top 10 folders. It could be top 10 confidential folders. I mean, it could be even custom folders that you created, doesn't matter. Pick your top 10 folders. Number two, review permission on those folders. I'm not just talking about the parent folder, I'm talking about the entire folder structure. Number three, if inappropriate entries are found in step one, while you review the permissions, in my case, yes, I found every one group listed in my corp data folder, which is a strict no-no. So then I go to step number two. Now, step number two is nothing but cleanup. After review, if you find something inappropriate, clean up immediately, okay? And how do you clean up? Again, define who should have access to the folder. Number two, perform a permission cleanup by removing the inappropriate entries found in step number one. As simple as that. I'm not complicating things here. Review and cleanup is all we're trying to do, right? Now, we saw this. We're not going to do this right-click exercise anymore because we understand the reviewing process itself is going to be time-consuming. So forget about cleaning up. So I go to AD Manager Plus here. I go to Reports. I go to NTFS Reports because we're talking about shared permissions and NTFS permissions. So we have a category exclusively for that. And then I go to Permission for Folders because we're trying to understand exactly that. Permission for folders. And I hit the plus sign in order to select my file server and the share that I want. This is my file server and the share. You have corp data right here, okay? Right. Now, I do not know whether corp data has 5 subfolders or 50 subfolders, okay? It could be even more than that. So to be on the safer side, I do all subfolders here, okay? All subfolders. And if I feel that it's going to be a bit too much because the size of the share folder is 1 terabyte, okay, let's assume, I'd like to refine the result. I even have filters to refine the result, okay, according to my requirement. And then I hit generate. Now, after the report is complete, you will get a report, one single report that's going to give you the list of permission of every folder that is in the folder structure. Not just the top folder as you see here, but for every folder. If you open up corp data, if you have subfolders, you'll be able to understand the permission in its entirety of all these folders and what level of access do users have. So I just go back, right? Permission for folders. It looks like it has 810 entries, and you have the folder-wise split up right here, okay? Corp data, and for all the other subfolders, if you just scroll down, you would have all the information that you want, okay? You just go to next. Now, you can very well understand the permission of every folder that is in the structure, okay? So you get to know basic things like the name of the account that has access to the piece of information, And is the inheritance set to true or false? And if it's a group, you get to know the members in the group as well. What level of access do they have? What permissions do they have? And does the permission apply to only that folder or even the child folders? Is it an allow or deny permission? Who's the owner of the folder? And also the entry type, okay? Whether it's full control or modify, read and execute, read or write or whatever. Now we give you details in one single report. That's my point here, right? So you get to know the permissions in its entirety within a span of 2 minutes. And after understanding step number 1, I told you that we'll have to quickly move to step number 2 now, which is nothing but clean up, right? So step number 1 is over, which is in the reporting section. Now, then I move to step number 2, which is the management section here. So when I go to step number 2, all I need to do here is go to file server management. We are not going to manage file servers here. We are not going to remove NTFS permissions. We are not going to remove share permissions or modify share permissions. We are trying to modify NTFS permissions here. So I go to modify NTFS permissions, which is the requirement, which is my current requirement. And the folder that I'm trying to clean up is corp data. So I select my target folder here. So I hit the plus sign, open up my file server, and the file server has all my shares that I want. And I select the share that I'm trying to clean up, which is corp data in our example. I hit OK. Now I can do 2 things here. The first thing is I can select the finance managers group. So I just go to the group section. I look for finance managers. Okay, I search. I have finance managers, USA. So I select the group. I can hit OK. And I can define what level of permission should my finance managers have on corp data and all of the entries that you can think of, okay? I can even add as many entries as I want. If you want to add another user or group, go ahead and do that, right? This is one way of doing things. Let me give you a shortcut here and my favorite shortcut, okay? I assume that all of you like this feature called copy and paste. Yes? So what I'm about to do here now is I go to copy from folder and open up my file server, okay? Now the folder that we're trying to clean up is corp data. Just below that, you notice that you have something called corp data backup. So I have a backup of the folder. Now, according to me, the backup folder has the exact permissions that I want on corp data. So what I'm about to do now is I'm about to copy permissions from the backup and paste it on corp data, okay? So select corp data backup, include the inherited permissions because we're not just talking about one folder here. We're talking about multiple folders. And you hit OK. You have now copied and pasted permissions. So now you have basically defined who should have access to corp data, okay? But we have still not removed the existing entries on corp data. So I mean, still the everyone group has access to corp data. You don't want that. And you have a couple of other entries as well. So you're not going to wipe them out immediately. And you're not going to do it one by one. That's time consuming. So how do you perform a complete permission cleanup on corp data and only define these 3 entries? Well, just have a look at the second checkbox. Remove all existing permissions on corp data and apply only the above permissions, which is these 3 permissions. So I select the checkbox, I hit OK, and then I hit modify, right? That's it, done. So we are, I mean, you also have a quick preview here if you're interested in knowing all the changes, even before the changes take place. So it gives you the existing permissions in the folder, new permissions, modified permissions, and removed permissions. So the permissions here are color coded, as you can see this, okay? So when you hit modify, after having a quick preview, you have now successfully managed permission on a confidential folder, not just on one folder, but the entire folder structure. You have reviewed permission using a report. You have cleaned up using the management module of the tool, right? So this is one thing that I would like to share with you. So I think we are done talking about reports here. Let me quickly jump to the other section just because we're pressed for time. I'm now going to be talking about the second topic for my session is effective management of objects in Active Directory. I mean, I see a lot of questions, which is good. So I'll do my best to get back to you with the answer for all those questions as soon as the session is over, okay? So please keep the questions coming. So the second topic for my session would be effective management of Active Directory objects. Now, what do I mean by effective management of Active Directory objects? Well, I am talking about bringing in some sort of standardization, right? And when I say standardization, I'm talking about avoiding data pollution. You do not want inconsistent syntax amongst your users, okay? You do not want a user's phone number to be in a different format, 3, 3, and 4, and another user's phone number to be 4, 4, and 3, okay? I mean, 4, 3, and 3. You do not want different naming conventions. First name dot last name for one user and first initial dot last name for another user, right? Now, there are two ways of bringing in standardization using this tool. You have a manual way of doing this, and you also have the automation to help you with bringing in standardization. I'm talking about AD Manager Plus here, okay? And you can bring in standardization in the entire life cycle of an object, which means you can bring in standardization while you create accounts, while you modify them, and also while you deprovision the accounts as soon as the employees leave the organization, right? There has to be a process in place. That's my point. Okay? Now, for my session here, for my topic, how do we bring in standardization? I'm going to be just focusing on the creation part of it, just because we are pressed for time. However, you can follow the same procedure and same methods for modifying accounts and while deprovisioning them as well, right? Let's start. Let's see how AD Manager Plus can help and can help administrators or can help you in bringing in some sort of standardization while you onboard users or while you create accounts. Okay? Now, for that, we have a very core framework in our tool, and that framework is called as templates. Okay? Now, please take a look at this layout. This layout has everything from the general attributes, from your Exchange, a remote mailbox, Skype for Business. You have Google Apps, Office 365 under one template, okay? Now, this is the benefit. We are talking about provisioning accounts and bringing in standardization on, I mean, in not just one platform here, but on multiple platforms, at least 4 different platforms here. Google, I mean, G Suite, Office 365, Exchange, and Skype, okay? OCS Link, and you can also influence your custom attributes as well while you're building or while you're talking about a template. I'm here to just explain 3 features in the template that help you bring in standardization, right? These 3 are the features. Let me quickly open up a real template here, an actual template, and then show you and explain these 3 features and quickly move on to the next section. Okay. Once again, you have all the tabs that you can think of that you want your users to have. The general tab, the account tab includes password, group membership. The Exchange tab, if you have Exchange server, if you want to create an Exchange mailbox, yes. If you want to create a remote mailbox for the user, yes. If you want to create an Office 365 account, the same time you provision an AD account with the right license mapping, yes, you can even do that as well. All right. I go to the Management tab of AD Manager Plus. We are talking about templates here. And by the way, you have templates not just for users, you have user templates for creation and modification. You have templates for group computers, groups, and contacts as well. Okay? And you can make use of any template for that matter. I'm just going to focus on one template and one example. So you open up user creation templates. Now in the template, I have just a couple of templates here. This is not a live setup, so you wouldn't find too many templates here. I just have six templates, that's it, okay? And I'm going to open up one template that I created for you, and I'll explain the features, the core features that I wanted to explain in the template. You see this, I have a template called user creation-HR and user creation-admin. Nothing, the difference is, if the admin is going to create users, the admin will be using this template. If the HR is going to create users, the HR will be using a different template. So we have different templates depending on the job role that you have inside of AD and Office 365. So let me open up the HR template, user creation-HR. Okay. You see that we have 3 features here: copy user attributes, enable drag and drop, creation rules. Let me quickly explain these features for you. Well, copy user attributes. What does this do? Now, let's assume that you're building a template for the IT department or for the marketing department or for sales, okay? Now, Your goal is to create a template, one template per department, okay? And you're starting afresh. So this template is for the IT department. So any user who's joining the IT team, you're going to use this template. So all the HR needs to do is just type the first name and last name and choose the title and do nothing else. That's the goal, okay? When you delegate this template to the HR. So how do you build an IT template with all the properties that you want and grant it or delegate it to your HR so that the HR only needs to fill in the first name, last name, and choose the title, okay? How do you achieve this using the template? Well, the first thing that you can do in order to populate values onto the template is using copy user attributes. So you just go to copy user attributes. If you're trying to build a template for the IT department, just look for the right IT user. I just type the keyword IT, right? I have a couple of IT users right here. And let's say I'm going to select the user called ITBD. This is the right account that I want because this account, according to me, is part of the IT department, is a regular account, and has all the exact properties that I want. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to select this user, copy the properties of this user, and paste it to the template. This way, I clone this user's property to the template because things becomes much more easier and uniform. So I go to select attributes, and I pick and choose the attributes that I want to copy. You have a whole bunch of attributes that you can select from. And after you select all the attributes, now that includes the group membership of the account in my example, the logon hours, and the OU in which the account is to be created, okay? Now I just hit apply. Now let's assume that you have copied all the properties from the target user and pasted it onto the template. This is feature number 1. So now you have the template ready with almost all the attributes that you want for every tab that you can think of. Not just the general tab, but the account tab, contact, exchange, so on and so forth, right? So contact, exchange. This is my demo setup. So please excuse me if you don't find too many attributes filled in, but you have everything that you want in order to provision a proper account in AD or Exchange or Office 365 or G Suite. Do not worry about that, okay? So you have the account tab, which has password and which has the group membership of the user. You can even include a logon script and all of the password attributes. You can even restrict them to certain logon hours if you want, right? Now you might notice that the general tab is the only tab that is highlighted here. The rest of the tabs are grayed out. There's a reason behind it. And since I've already built this template, what I've done here is, and since this template is going to be for the HR, I as an administrator, after populating all the values in the template, I decided to hide certain fields from the HR's view. I did not want the HR to know what the password is by opening up a template. I did not want the HR to know what the group membership is by opening up a template. So I populated all these values by using copy user attributes, or I can manually do this. And then using enable drag and drop, what I've done here is I have customized this layout, okay? Now, if you take a closer look at the layout, only the first name, last name, and title will be visible for the HR when they open up this template. All other fields that you see here have values in them. Example, the account tab has values like password, group membership, but none of these fields will be visible from my HR because I've hidden these fields for them, okay? So that's the benefit of enable drag and drop, customizing the layout after filling in all the attributes. So I've explained 2 values. And the third one, or the third functionality, is the creation rule. This is the most important of all. Excuse me. Now, if you take a look at the creation rule, rules are nothing but smart logic. And I have 2 sample rules right here to better explain the scenario, okay? Now let's have a look at these 2 rules and what these rules mean. So rule number 1 and rule number 2, I'm going to explain rules one by one. So rule number 1, every rule is based on a condition. So the condition is the primary key factor, and based on conditions, you will be able to assign values. Now, according to rule number 1, okay, the condition that I have set is the title, if the title of the user that is about to be created as IT admin, I want certain values to be assigned for this user automatically based on the condition. So if the title is IT admin, I want certain properties to be populated. This is rule number 1. My rule number 2 is, if the title is going to be IT technician, not an admin, but a technician, I want different set of attributes to be populated for the user. Okay. Now I can go on and create as many roles as I want. If you have 10 titles or 20 different departments, based on a condition, you'll be able to set values. That's the benefit of this creation rules. Okay. So I've explained 3 core features in a template: copy user, enable drag and drop, creation rules. Enable drag and drop is customizing the entire layout so that you can delegate it to the HR or the helpdesk technician without revealing the actual information. Creation rules is for defining the logic, condition-based logic, and then copy user is to copy and then start building the template. Okay. All right. This is for creation. The same can be applied for modification as well. And you can even follow the same procedure for deep provisioning as well. Okay. So I'll be showing you the actual functioning of the creation rules in about 5 minutes from now. So please bear with me until then. So this is one way of how we bring in standardization while you create accounts. Okay. But what are the other things that you can do to make the process of Active Directory and Office 365 management a lot more standardized, a lot more seamless? Well, other than managing objects using a standalone setup, you can also integrate a tool like AD Manager Plus with other business applications. Let me give you a few examples here. Okay, you can integrate AD Manager Plus with an ITSM tool from Manage Engine like Service Desk Plus. You can integrate AD Manager Plus with another ITSM vendor like ServiceNow, and you can also integrate AD Manager Plus with MS SQL or Oracle databases for user onboarding or offboarding. Okay, let me give you a few screenshots here so you get to know what exactly I'm talking about. Excuse me. After you integrate AD Manager Plus with an ITSM offering for Manage Engine, which is Service Desk, your Service Desk technicians, once they log into the software, which is the ITSM software, they get additional Active Directory management operations, starting from creation to disabling users and deleting users, right from the ITSM console. This is not AD Manager, this is right from the ITSM console. And after integrating Service Desk with AD Manager, these options pop up. Now, if you talk about ServiceNow, after integration with AD Manager, the ServiceNow console would have additional Active Directory operations, right? So these are the other benefits that you can get by integrating a tool like AD Manager Plus with other business applications. So one is we maintain standardization. We maintain standardization for all accounts while creating, while modifying, while deleting them using the help of a template, right? And the second thing is, after you have AD Manager Plus ready for onboarding and offboarding, you'll be able to integrate the tool with other business applications. So we are talking about bringing in standardization not just by using AD Manager, but also extending the capability to your ITSM tools as well, right? And not just ITSM tools, to your Oracle or SQL databases as well for user onboarding and offboarding. All right. The last topic, I have another topic. So please bear with me for 5 more minutes here. So the topic that I'm about to be discussing now, the third topic for my session, is going to be about automation. And I'm 100% sure that all of you are seeing this GIF on the screen, right? I mean, this is a lame example, I'm sorry, but I thought this would better explain my case. Now, this GIF that you see on the screen, according to me, is automation in theory. Automation in theory works perfectly fine. And all of us know how automation works in reality. Not all the time, but there are chances for some issues when you talk about automation, right? So the next GIF that you're about to see is going to be automation in reality. Now, in reality, the point that I'm trying to drive is pretty simple. An automation could wrong at any point in time. So the whole point of you automating stuff and it going wrong, I mean, it defeats the whole point of you creating an automation. So my point here is, whenever you create an automation for any process for that matter, the automation should be controlled. We are talking about controlled automation here. That is something that you can achieve with a tool like AD Manager Plus. Not just automate, but have controlled automation in place. Well, what are the things that you can automate? I'm just going to give you 3 examples and then we'll move on to the next section here. The first thing that you can automate is user onboarding. And this next thing that you can automate is user offboarding. And the most important or the interesting part of all is you can even automate the process of Active Directory and Office 365 cleanup. Now, what exactly is cleanup? Can you explain that if that's your question? Well, I have 4 examples for you. Cleanup includes these 4 activities and even more, but I'm just going to explain the core of 4 features here that are part of a cleanup activity. Number 1, users who have not logged in for more than 180 days and are still enabled in your infrastructure, okay? That's part of cleanup. Number 2, computers that have not authenticated for more than 180 days or 6 months. Clean them up. Number 3, groups without any members. I mean, temp groups, test groups, if at all you have any, and if they are security groups, they need to be handled. So we are talking about cleaning up groups as well. Number 4, unused GPOs. So if you have 15 GPOs or I mean, I have seen infrastructures as big as they have 650 domain controllers, 700 domain controllers, and they have, let's say, 150 GPOs or 200 GPOs. Now, so if you have too many GPOs, be it 10 or 15 or 200, it doesn't matter. So if you have unused GPOs, please clean them up, okay? And automate the process. Okay? Why spend time in actually doing this manually when you can automate the process? So AD Manager Plus can help you automate 3 primary tasks: onboarding users, offboarding users, cleaning up your AD and O365. And I'm just going to give you a quick example of all that. Well, go to the automation tab. The automation tab is where you go to create an automation. If you have multiple actions to be included in one shot, you have to create something called automation policy. The policy is nothing but a group of actions, right? So you create a policy. So I have one created for deprovisioning accounts, and I have one created for provisioning accounts. After creating a policy, you then go to automation. You create a new automation, right? And for example, let's say we are targeting our users. You can even target computers, groups, and contacts. But for our case, I'm just going to target user automation here. Now, my requirement is I need to create accounts, create an automation for provisioning accounts. So I just go to the task, and in the task, I select create users. Okay? And I can choose a template here. So let's say I select the user creation -admin template. You might be wondering, hey, Vibin, how do I create users in multiple job roles using one template? Well, I already explained to you that in one template, you can have n number of rules. So based on the user's title or any other trigger factor, the same template can be used to provision accounts in multiple places. Okay? And the next part is the source. Now, what is the source for this automation? Where should this automation go and fetch the user details from? It could be a CSV file stored in a network path. It could be directly from your SQL server, Oracle database. I mean, tools like Zoho People, which is a HRMS tool, and you have HR tools like Workday, Altipro, and Bamboo HR, and a lot more that you can pick and choose from, right? You can select any one of these sources here, and I choose CSV. And what I'm about to do here now is I want this automation to run on a daily basis. So I want this automation to run at 10:30 in the morning. Go to the location that I have specified here and see whether there are any new users on the CSV file, or the location can even be a SQL database, it doesn't matter. And then use this template and provision the accounts in the respective platforms. And I want a notification to be triggered. As and when the accounts are created, I want a notification to be triggered. Now, this is for creating users. Remember I told you about controlling an automation? If you do not want the automation to do anything in AD or Office 365 without your approval, all you need to do is just enable the switch here. This simple checkbox, which is business workflow, is directly tied to the workflow tab that you see here. Workflow is nothing but a request and approve methodology. So instead of the automation creating accounts in AD Office 365 or deleting accounts from them, it then raises a request to you for approval. So only when you hit execute, things will happen in the platform, right? You have the ability to even modify an automation and then execute it as well, right? So that's the automation part of it. So to keep it simple, you can automate user creation, you can automate user offboarding, you can integrate AD Manager Plus with any database that you want for an automation to take place, right? As in this case, the HR technician fills in a basic form, the form lands to a SQL database, the automation module in AD Manager Plus reads information from the SQL and Oracle database, and then using the template and other features, the accounts are created in AD and Office 365, and the account is prime and ready to log in, right? That's as simple as that. This is a small illustration. The application can also automate the process of, this is for user onboarding. When I say onboarding, not just an Active Directory, in Office 365 with or without license, create Exchange mailbox, no matter what version of Exchange you have, create account in G Suite as well, all in one shot. And the same logic can be applied for cleanup or user offboarding as well, right? And you can decide what should happen or what should not happen when you disable or delete users, right? Now, after deleting users, you want their Office 365 license to be revoked, you want them to be removed from certain groups, you can define all such actions in the automation and then have it take place. All right, last topic, and then we're done. The fourth topic here for my session is about delegation, okay? Now let's think of it like this. You are an administrator and you delegate actions to other users in the infrastructure, okay? If the delegation model that you follow is going to be very precise, we are not talking about excessive permissions here, okay? So you do not have the concept of excessive permissions if your delegation is really precise. But if your delegation is not 100% right, then you have the problem of too many administrators. You do not want too many administrative accounts floating in your infrastructure, especially the ones that you think is a regular helpdesk technician. What if you have given additional rights to the helpdesk technician in the form of delegation, right? So we are not going to follow the Microsoft method of delegation here. We are not going to add users to groups, or we are not going to use the delegation of control wizard for giving things. That is what I call as intrusive model of delegation. When you add this user to a group called password reset group, you are increasing this user's right directly in AD. If you give an Office 365 role to this user, you are increasing this user's right in Office 365. That's an intrusive model of delegation, which if not done right, can lead to this too many administrators. You don't want that, especially in this era of compliance and auditing and all that stuff. Now, how do we overcome that in AD Manager? Well, in AD Manager Plus, we have something called roles. Instead of security groups, instead of Office 365 roles, we have a different kind of role here, which we call as task controllers in AD Manager. Now, these roles are nothing but simple checkboxes. Now, you have a checkbox for every action item that you can imagine, right? Let me quickly open up a role for you. So you go to delegation, you go to roles, and inside of roles, you can create any number of roles that you want. I mean, you have some built-in roles like create users, modify users, general property, rename users, reset password, and you have a super role called a super admin role. Okay? But for this example, what I'm about to do here is I've created a custom role. The name of the role is HR-user creation. From the name of it, you can very well guess the core purpose of this role. So if you open up this role would have just one checkbox enabled out of all the 100 checkboxes that you can enable, right? Let me show you how the role looks like, because I'm going to do this live. Now, out of all the actions, management, reporting, administration, Office 365, backup. I mean, by the way, the tool can also help you backup information if you want. So out of all the reports and everything that you can see under a regular admins tab, I have selected just one action in the role, create single user, okay? And the kind of restrictions that we're talking about is we are talking about even attribute-based restrictions here, not just action-wide restrictions, but also attribute-wise restrictions, okay? You just go to user attribute privilege and you don't want this account to create anything in Office 365, you simply uncheck the box. You don't want anything to do with Exchange, just uncheck the whole Exchange attribute thing and hit OK. Okay? So we are talking about attribute-wise restriction that you can impose on a role. And this is just one checkbox enabled in the entire role. Please bear that in mind. And the name of the role is HR-user creation. Okay? Now let's just hit cancel because I don't want to make any modification to the role. After creating a role, I then map this role to my technician, and the technician to whom I map this role, the HR-user creation role, the technician to whom I mapped it is the HR user. Okay, I have a user in the name of HR. Okay, let me quickly show this to you. You see this? I have the HR account. The HR account in my AD is just part of domain users, no other groups. Okay, but what I'm doing now is to the same account. Using a tool like AD Manager, I'm mapping a role called HR-user creation. And now let's see what happens when the HR logs into AD Manager Plus, okay? How the user interface looks like from a HR standpoint. So I have now logged in as the admin. I'm going to hit sign out, right? And I'm now going to log in as the HR. I type the password. Right? And please bear in mind, this is my Windows username and password of the HR account, okay? This is an actual Windows authentication here. So I'm going to switch from AD Manager Plus authentication to my domain. This is my Windows username and password. I hit login. Let's see how the interface looks like for the HR. The HR does not have any other option other than the single checkbox that was enabled in the role. And if you go to that specific action as a HR, create single user, you see that the layout is a very simple form. I mean, this is a template. If the HR tries to switch templates among the 6 templates that I have, the HR will only have access to one specific template. And even in that template, you remember that I showed you while talking about the templates, the HR template had everything hidden except for these 3 fields, okay? When I log in as the admin, I'll be able to see everything, but when I log in as the HR, I'll only be able to see a basic form here. This is all the HR needs to provision accounts, okay? I'm going to create 2 accounts here. Let's do this, okay? I'm going to create a technician account first, and then we'll create an admin account, okay? Let's do this. Let's call this, so today is Tuesday. Tuesday, I mean, this is just for example, so please excuse the naming names here. So the first name is going to be Tuesday and the last name is going to be technician. And the title for the account is, I'm going to select the title to be IT technician. So I have 2 titles here that I'll be playing with. So the first title is IT technician and I hit create. Please note the HR does not have any rights in Active Directory to create accounts. And using a tool like AD Manager Plus, just because we have mapped a role, the account is now successfully created. We're just going to see whether the account is now created. Now, the HR just typed in the first name, last name, and selected the title, did nothing else. So I open up AD, okay? The OU in which the account is created is the USA OU. So I'm going to quickly go to the USA OU, which is right here. Do a right click, hit refresh. I'm looking for Tuesday. The first name is Tuesday. There you go. Okay. So I open up the user properties. Now I just, as a HR, I just typed the first name, last name, and selected the title. That's it. But take a look at this. The display name is populated. The email address is populated. The account attributes, you have the logon name for the user set. If you go to the member of tab, the user is part of the password reset group, the account creation group. Everything is in place. Now this is for a technician, right? Now let's try creating an administrator account with the same template. So let's do this. Tuesday admin, okay? This is not a technician account, this is an admin account. So I'm just going to change the title. The title from the drop-down box that I'll be using is the IT admin. Okay? Again, the same template. I hit create, and the account is successfully created. Again, in the same USA OU, name of the technician is Tuesday admin. So I just open up my Active Directory users and computers. I just do a quick refresh, and I look for Tuesday admin right here. Even though I use the same template, just take a look at the properties of the user. If you go to the member of tab, now this is an admin account. The admin account is added to all the admin groups that I want, okay? But the HR did not know these values. All the HR did was filling in a simple form and getting things done. And if you're wondering, will all this be recorded somewhere? Do we have an audit trail for all these actions? Let's check. I'm going to log in as the admin. And after logging in as the admin, if I take a look at the delegation tab, right? The delegation tab has an audit report section, which will give you the actions performed by your users. So if you're looking at the actions performed by your technicians in the last 1 hour, okay, last 1 hour, and I hit go, right? All right, it looks like we have it right here. So the HR has created a single user, and the name of the account that was created is Tuesday admin and Tuesday technician. Successfully created the user in both cases. I have the timestamp of the action right here. And if I just hit add details, I get all the properties of the user account that was created, right? Now, this is AD Manager Plus for you, okay? The tool in OneRoof can help you manage, report, and delegate, automate things in AD, Office 365, and Exchange. That's pretty much it from my end. Now, AD Manager Plus is one of the modules of a larger bundle called AD 360. And Sharda, in her session, will be talking about the self-service module for the next for 30 minutes, right? That's going to be her session here. So once again, I see a lot of questions, and you can also make a note of my email address. Just drop it to me. I hope you found these use cases informative. If you need more details, if you need more explanation, more resources, please get in touch with us. We'd be more than happy to answer. I'm going to now quickly pass on the mic to Sharda. So I'm going to switch my screen here. So I'm going to hit stop share and then probably give the screen to Sharda. Thank you very much for your time and patience. I look forward to your questions. All of you stay safe. Have a wonderful day, right?
Thank you so much, Vivin, for a very, very informative session. I thoroughly enjoyed today's session a lot more. So thank you so much for that. Hi, everybody. This is Sharda Murthy. And before I jump into the session, since we just switched patterns, I would like to quickly do an audio and video check. So if you can hear me loud and clear, and if you have no trouble viewing the screen, please drop in a yes message in the chat box.